This video is meant to serve as a part 2 to my previous video regarding owner collusion. That video details what happened, why it happened, and the ramifications. The topic of this video centers around the effect collusion had on one specific player. If you've watched the previous video or are familiar with the outcome, then you'll know that the owners had to pay $280 million distributed across the league to the players affected by collusions 1, 2, and 3. On the surface, it appears like everything worked out in the end. Yes, players missed out on higher salaries, but were eventually awarded their compensation through the settlement. While the affected players did get the money they deserved after some time, there was one thing that was taken away from some players that they never got back: playing time. Specifically, I look at the case of Al Oliver. Oliver is perhaps one of the greatest baseball players you've never heard of, and here's a summary of his amazing career. An outfielder and first baseman who played in Major League Baseball for 18 seasons from 1968 to 1985, he was one of the best in the league during his era. Oliver played for 7 teams, but spent the most time with the Pittsburgh Pirates. In his career, he came to the plate nearly 9,800 times, slashing .303 with a .344 on base and .451 slugging for a .795 OPS and 121 adjusted OPS. He has over 2,700 career hits, over 200 career home runs, over 500 doubles, over 1,300 RBIs, over 4,000 total bases, and earned 43.6 WAR. He received MVP votes in 10 seasons while winning 3 Silver Slugger awards and being selected to the All-Star Game 7 times. Specifically, in a 12-year stretch from 1972 to 1983, there were 78 players in Major League Baseball to have at least 5,000 plate appearances. Of those 78, Oliver ranks 24th in OPS, 22nd in adjusted OPS, and 25th in WAR. Without a doubt, a top 25 hitter during his prime with a long list of impressive counting stats and achievements. A great career, but not Hall of Fame worthy in the eyes of the voters, as he only received 4.3% of the vote on his first and only ballot in 1991. So the question is, how did collusion affect Al Oliver? Well, it is without a doubt that if not for collusion, Oliver would have been in the Hall of Fame. For you see, he was unwillingly forced out of the league prematurely. I mentioned often in my previous video how tons of players were offered short, low-salary contracts in order to keep budget low and drive revenue up. While that practice was widespread among the league, so too was not even offering contracts to some veteran players at all. Following the 1985 season, Oliver expressed interest to continue playing. He would have been 39 entering the 1986 season, but according to him, he believed he could continue to play as a designated hitter. Specifically, he was quoted saying, "I could easily have DH another 4 or 5 years without any problems at the rate that I was going and the condition I was in." Entering 1986, Oliver had 2,743 career hits, roughly 250 shy of 3,000. It's easily believable he could have gotten to that 3,000 hit milestone had he played 2 or 3 more seasons. Some may be thinking, even if there was no collusion and Oliver is able to collect 3,000 hits, that doesn't automatically mean he'd be elected into the Hall of Fame. After all, his career stats, specifically his adjusted OPS and WAR, are on the lower side compared to Hall of Fame outfielders. Theoretically that is true, but to say Oliver would not have been a Hall of Famer despite 3,000 career hits is far-fetched to believe. As of July 2023, there have been 33 players in MLB history to achieve 3,000 hits in their career. Of those 33, only 7 are not in the Hall of Fame. Of those 7, 4 are not eligible yet, and the other 3 have been marred by 1 or more controversies in their career. Given that Oliver has no controversy surrounding him, it seems extremely likely he would have been inducted. Lest we forget that Hall of Fame voters from that era did not have knowledge of the advanced statistics we have today. If a player achieved a notable milestone like 500 home runs or 3,000 hits, he was a lock for the Hall. Now, for what it's worth, 1985 was the worst season of Oliver's career. That year, he was subjected to a platoon role, being limited to only 280 plate appearances across 98 games between the Los Angeles Dodgers and Toronto Blue Jays. In total, he slashed .252 with a .286 on base and .357 slugging for a .643 OPS and 75 adjusted OPS between the two clubs. One could argue that being a 39-year-old coming off a dreadful season would prompt teams not to sign him, as he would be dead weight on a roster. However, I believe that's misleading and untrue for multiple reasons. First, while Oliver did have a down year in 1985, it doesn't represent his recent playing ability. It's not as if he was declining in previous seasons entering that year. What you may not know is that 1985 was the only year in which Oliver posted a below average offensive season. Excluding an 8 at-bat stint in 1968, Oliver had posted an adjusted OPS of at least 100 in every single season from 1969 to 1984. Looking at his two previous seasons when he was 36 and 37 years old, Oliver combined to have over 1,100 plate appearances, batting exactly 300 with an adjusted OPS of 108. So yes, 1985 was a poor season for him, but it really looked like it was a one-off ordeal. If Al Oliver said he could continue to hit, and was still a good hitter in the previous years, I'm inclined to believe he would have still been an effective hitter in 1986 and beyond. Something to keep in mind, I noticed he missed most of May and June, being limited to 17 at-bats total those 2 months. While I was unable to find any sources, that lack of playing time may suggest he was hurt and possibly nursing an injury that season that may have led to his poor hitting. Again, I can't confirm that, but it seems like a strong possibility. Another reason why I believe Oliver could have kept playing was his production in the playoffs. As a member of the Blue Jays in 1985, Toronto won the American League Eastern Division that season and played in the American League Championship Series. In that 7-game series, Oliver was limited to only 9 plate appearances, but he collected 3 hits and 3 RBIs. Those 3 RBIs were also all game-winning RBIs. In Game 2 of the ALCS, Oliver hit a walk-off single in extra innings to give the Blue Jays the victory. In Game 4, with the score tied in the top of the 9th, Oliver delivered a clutch 2-run double to give Toronto the lead and eventually the win. Both of those hits were off legendary closer Dan Quisenberry, one of the greatest relief pitchers of all time. Batting .375 in the postseason and having 2 absolutely clutch hits certainly helped solidify Oliver's case that he still had something left to prove. Now, if you still don't take my word for it, perhaps you would from Thomas Roberts. If you remember, Roberts was the arbitrator for Collusion 1, the first grievance the Players Association filed. You see, despite his wishes to continue playing, Oliver did not receive a contract offer from anyone and never played another game in Major League Baseball following 1985. His last moments on a baseball field were him being pinch hit for during the 5th inning in Game 7 of the American League Championship Series. Down a run with a runner in scoring position, right-handed Cliff Johnson came to the plate as a pinch hitter, much to the dismay of Al Oliver.
I don't know what Oliver was saying, but he was upset. Did he say, I read his lips right now, they're going to get a right-hander up? He's mad. He is hot.
Well, Al, who actually is a very personable guy, but not short on ego, has long contended he shouldn't be platooned at all. He says he can hit the left-handers.
Watch Al Oliver. He is very upset. When he was taken out for a pinch hitter, he perhaps will not be here next year, and very upset.
There's not much dissension on this Blue Jay club, but Al Oliver is hot right now.
The Blue Jays would lose Game 7, and that was it for his career. 10 years later, in 1995, Roberts determined that Oliver was one of the 10 players who did not receive an offer for 1986 due to Collusion 1, and was awarded nearly $700,000. Here's your quick reminder that during this period of collusion, the owners shrunk the active roster size from 25 players to 24 in order to further save money. That lone roster spot very well could have gone to Oliver, but instead of being on a team for 1986, he was out of a job. Without collusion, it's conceivable and likely that Al Oliver reaches the 30,000 hits mark and becomes a Hall of Famer. In case anyone was wondering, do I personally believe Al Oliver should be inducted into the Hall of Fame even with the career he has? 100% yes. I understand that may be unpopular thinking, given his notable poor comparison to others in the Hall at the same position, but let's look at the stats. Ignoring the fact that one of baseball's exclusive achievements was stripped away from him, Oliver ought to be inducted regardless. He's just one of 35 players ever to achieve at least 2,743 hits and have a lifetime 300 or better batting average. Of those 35, 4 are not in the Hall of Fame. Those 4 are Pete Rose, Ichiro Suzuki, Miguel Cabrera, and Al Oliver. 2 non-eligible players, 1 with a lifetime ban, and the man of the video. Additionally, there are 40 players ever to get as many hits as Oliver while also achieving an equal or greater adjusted OPS and an equal or greater WAR. Of those 40, 6 are not in the Hall of Fame, where Oliver is the only eligible non-steroid user on this list. On screen now are some of Al Oliver's career statistics compared to another outfielder who was elected into Cooperstown. As you can see, similar stats all around. Nearly identical batting averages and slugging percentages, this mystery Hall of Famer has a higher on-base and OPS, but both players have almost the same adjusted OPS. The Hall of Famer may have more WAR and 700 fewer plate appearances, but Oliver makes up for it with 400 more hits and 500 more total bases. This comparable Hall of Famer is former Cardinals right fielder Enos Slaughter. If you believe Slaughter deservingly belongs in the Hall of Fame, perhaps you also believe Oliver should be one as well. I can spend a long time comparing him to other Hall of Famers and making my case, but you get the picture by now. Speaking of which, when Oliver appeared on the Hall of Fame ballot for the first time in 1991, he received just 4.3% of the vote, being dropped off only after a single year, as a player needs to receive at least 5% of the vote to remain on the ballot. I expect Oliver to reappear on the Veterans Committee ballot in 2 years for the classic baseball era voting. I can only hope at least 12 of the 16 voters agree with my thinking and rightfully elect Al Oliver once and for all. Collusion stole millions of dollars from many players, but it stole the Hall of Fame placement for at least one man in particular, something he may never get back.